What happens when a leader refuses to let his people be forgotten? President Ibrahim Traoré welcomed back young Burkinabe repatriated from the U.S., promising them a future they've been denied for years. But this story isn't just about survival. It's about dignity, hope, and change. President Ibrahim Traoré sat in his office one morning, reviewing reports, when a messenger entered with urgent news. The United States government had announced it was repatriating several of its citizens, many of whom were originally from Burkina Faso. These young Burkinabe, who had left their homeland years ago in search of better opportunities, were being sent back home. At first, the news seemed like just another consequence of the ever-changing global landscape. However, as Ibrahim thought about it more, his heart grew heavy. These young people, who had once sought the promise of a better life, were now coming back with nowhere to go, caught between two worlds. Many of them had struggled in the U.S., facing discrimination, isolation, and economic hardship. Some had managed to succeed, but many others had been left behind, still dreaming of a home they barely remembered. The government had framed this as a return to their roots. But for many, it felt like a sentence of failure, like they had nowhere to turn. As president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim understood the challenge ahead. He couldn't just see them as statistics. They were his people. And he was not going to let them return to a country where they had no future. But the young people were not failures. They were resources. Resources with untapped potential, with skills and dreams that had been forged in other lands. They were coming back with a knowledge of the world that Burkina Faso could use. Ibrahim saw this as an opportunity to make the country stronger, to build something new and better for them and for the future of Burkina Faso. I will welcome them back with open arms, Ibrahim thought to himself. We cannot let our youth be the victims of a broken system. We will turn this challenge into a victory for all of Africa. Ibrahim's mind was already racing with ideas for how to help these young people. He knew the path ahead would not be easy. The corruption of past governments had left the country in a weak state. But he also knew that Burkina Faso's future was in the hands of its youth. This was their chance to help rebuild the nation they had been forced to leave behind. Little did Ibrahim know, this would be one of the defining moments of his presidency, a moment that would ignite the hope of thousands of young people and give them the purpose and opportunity they had been denied for too long. When the day arrived for the repatriated citizens of Burkina Faso to return home, the atmosphere at the airport was heavy with mixed emotions. Some of the young people were excited to be back, but many others were anxious and unsure of what awaited them. They had spent years in the United States, some of them building new lives, others struggling to find their place. Now they were being sent back to a country they barely remembered, a place that felt both familiar and foreign to them. Ibrahim Traoré, ever the symbol of hope and unity, stood at the airport to greet them. He was not just a president, but a man of the people, always striving to make them feel seen and heard. He understood their pain, their uncertainty. He knew what it felt like to struggle for something better, to fight for a brighter future. And in that moment, he made a vow to them, a vow that would change the course of their lives. As the first group of young people stepped off the plane, Ibrahim smiled and walked toward them with open arms. "Welcome home," he said, his voice strong and filled with warmth. "You are not here as failures. You are not a burden. You are our future. You are our resources, and you will help us build the future of Burkina Faso." The young people looked at him with wide eyes. They had expected to return to a country that would see them as a burden, something to be ashamed of. But Ibrahim's words were different. They were words of encouragement, of pride, and of possibility. "Many of you left in search of a better life," he continued, his voice steady and sincere. "And you've gained experience, knowledge, and skills that will help us rebuild this country. Burkina Faso needs you. Africa needs you." Some of them started to tear up, overwhelmed by the emotion of hearing their president speak directly to them, acknowledging their struggle and seeing them not as failures, but as the future. Ibrahim didn't stop there. He addressed them all, speaking about the challenges they faced, but also about the incredible potential that lay before them. "Too many African politicians have failed you, have failed all of us," he said, his tone firm. "They are corrupt, selfish, and have no shame. They steal from our people, leaving us with nothing. But I will not let this happen again. We will work together to ensure that no one has to leave their home for a better life." His words struck deep into the hearts of the repatriates. They had lived with the pain of being far from home for so long, but now here was a leader who understood their struggles and was committed to giving them a chance. It wasn't just empty promises. His actions spoke louder than words. Ibrahim Traoré had already made strides to address the country's poverty and corruption, and now he was giving these young people a chance to contribute to that progress. He continued, "I promise you, I will work with you to create jobs, to build schools, to provide health care. You will not be left behind. You will be the leaders of the new Burkina Faso." For the first time in years, the young people who had returned to their homeland felt hope. They had come back from a foreign land, uncertain of their future, and now they were welcomed back with the promise of a new beginning. The crowd gathered around him, and for a moment it felt as though the entire future of Burkina Faso was in their hands. Ibrahim Traoré's vision for the country was clear. He believed in the power of his people, and he had faith that they could rebuild Burkina Faso together. As the repatriated citizens settled into their new lives, many began to volunteer in local projects, using their skills to help modernize industries and build infrastructure. Ibrahim kept his promise to provide work and opportunity, opening up new sectors in agriculture, technology, and education. Slowly, the foundations of a new Burkina Faso began to take shape, one where the future of the nation no longer lay in the hands of corrupt politicians, but in the hearts and minds of the people. Ibrahim's bold move had paid off. The repatriated citizens weren't just returning to a land of poverty and broken promises, they were returning to a home that was being rebuilt, one where they could grow and thrive. They were no longer the lost generation. They were the builders of a brighter future. And under Ibrahim's leadership, Burkina Faso began to show the world that true strength came from within, from the unity of its people, and from the courage of its leaders. As the days passed, the repatriated citizens began settling into their new lives in Burkina Faso. Many of them struggled with the transition, adjusting to a land they barely remembered. Some had been away for years, while others had been forced to leave their homes when they were young children. Now, they were returning to a country that had changed, but also one that was beginning to change in ways they could feel. Ibrahim Traoré was fully committed to the task of rebuilding their lives. He had already promised them jobs, education, and opportunities, and he made sure his promises were kept. A few days after their arrival, Ibrahim organized a meeting with the young repatriates in a large hall, where he stood in front of them, determined to offer a clear vision for the future. "You are not just here to fill space," Ibrahim told them, his voice firm and full of purpose. "You are the ones who will rebuild this country. We have the power to transform Burkina Faso, but only if we all work together. You bring skills, knowledge, and ideas that we can use to make this country better. The future is in your hands." The young people listened intently. Many had come back with no expectations of work or opportunity, fearing they would be left to struggle once again. But Ibrahim's words were different. He spoke with the conviction of someone who truly believed in the power of his people. He was not simply offering hope. He was giving them the tools to succeed. As Ibrahim walked around the room, speaking to individuals, he saw the excitement growing in their eyes. Many of them had studied abroad, worked in various industries, and gained valuable experiences. Now, they were back in Burkina Faso with the chance to apply everything they had learned. Some would work in agriculture, others in technology, and many would help revitalize the country's education system. Ibrahim introduced a new national program called Future Builders, a large-scale initiative designed to provide jobs for young people like the repatriates. It focused on improving infrastructure, expanding industries, and investing in education. Ibrahim had learned that for Burkina Faso to truly prosper, it needed to build from within, using the talents and knowledge of its people. The government quickly started recruiting the repatriated citizens to help build projects, from roads and bridges to schools and hospitals. Those who had once felt abandoned now felt needed. They had a purpose. Ibrahim made sure that every young person had a job waiting for them, and he personally checked on the progress of these projects. His leadership had always been about the people, and now it was even more so. The people of Burkina Faso were his top priority. Over time, the work Ibrahim had promised began to take shape. Roads were built, schools were improved, and hospitals saw new investments. The young people, once unsure of what to expect, began to see the fruits of their labor. They knew that their contributions were making a difference. But it wasn't just about the work. They were starting to build something much larger, a country based on dignity, opportunity, and equality. One of the first repatriates to join the program was Aminata, a young woman who had studied engineering in the U.S. When she returned to Burkina Faso, she initially felt disconnected, uncertain of how to apply what she had learned. But soon, she found herself working on a project to build a new bridge that would connect rural communities to the city, providing them with better access to markets and healthcare. "I never thought I would come back here and make a real difference," Aminata said to Ibrahim one evening as they walked along the construction site. "But now, I see that I'm helping to change lives, not just my own." Ibrahim smiled, proud of the transformation he was witnessing. "You're not just helping to build a bridge, Aminata. You're helping to build the future of Burkina Faso." The nation's sense of pride grew stronger every day. Young people who had been repatriated were no longer seen as outsiders, but as vital contributors to the future of the country. They had returned with the knowledge and skills to create a new era for Burkina Faso. The promise Ibrahim had made to them was coming true, and the country was slowly beginning to rise. There were, of course, challenges. Corruption within certain sectors remained a struggle, and not everyone was happy with the changes Ibrahim was trying to implement. Some politicians who were heavily invested in the old systems of corruption and mismanagement tried to undermine his efforts, but Ibrahim remained steadfast. His resolve was unwavering, and he continued to challenge those who were trying to hold back progress. "You may try to stop me," Ibrahim often said to his inner circle, "but we are moving forward. We will not go back. We will not let our country fall into the hands of those who do not care for the people." With each passing day, the hope and faith of the people grew. The young repatriates, once lost and uncertain, had now found their place in a country that was beginning to offer them something real, a future, built with their hands, their dreams, and their efforts. And as Ibrahim looked around at the work being done, at the young people working tirelessly to create a new Burkina Faso, he knew that the vision he had for his country was becoming a reality. This was just the beginning. The future was bright, and together they would make sure that Burkina Faso would never again be a place where young people had to leave in search of a better life. The country's future was now in their hands, and they would rebuild it with pride and dignity. The progress in Burkina Faso continued to accelerate as more young people joined the efforts to rebuild the country. The new projects, roads, schools, healthcare systems, were beginning to show tangible results. The energy in the air was palpable, and for the first time in years, there was a sense of real hope among the people. The repatriates, once unsure of their place, had now found themselves working side by side with locals to reshape their future. Ibrahim Traoré was at the forefront of this transformation, guiding every step of the process. He made it a point to visit the various projects regularly, meeting the young people and hearing their stories. He wanted them to know that their hard work wasn't just changing the country, it was changing history. His presidency, once marked by uncertainty, was now a symbol of renewal. But not everyone was happy with the changes happening in Burkina Faso. Ibrahim's bold moves, including his efforts to cut down corruption and prioritize the country's self-reliance, didn't sit well with certain powerful figures in the political establishment. Some of these individuals had been used to the old ways, where they could pocket the nation's resources with little consequence. They saw Ibrahim's success as a direct threat to their own power. Behind closed doors, a quiet conspiracy began to take shape. Some of the most influential figures within the government, those who had connections with Western powers, began to plot against Ibrahim. They didn't like the way he was reshaping the country. They didn't like his challenge to the status quo. They wanted to weaken him and his efforts for African self-sufficiency. But Ibrahim, as always, was aware. He had learned over the years not to trust everyone who smiled in his face, not to believe in every hand that was extended to him. He understood the political games being played, and he knew that his enemies would try to take him down in any way they could. His own cousin, who had once worked with him closely, had been overheard making secretive calls with individuals who had ties to foreign interests. Ibrahim had trusted him once, but now he wasn't sure. The signs of betrayal were starting to appear, and Ibrahim knew that the fight for his survival would not only be against external forces, but also against internal enemies. He had already survived one attempt on his life. Would he survive this political conspiracy? He wasn't sure, but he couldn't back down. It was late one night when Ibrahim gathered his most trusted advisors in his office. The mood was serious, the air thick with the weight of the decisions that had to be made. "There are people in our government trying to undermine everything we've worked for," Ibrahim said, his voice steady, but the anger in his eyes was unmistakable. "They think they can play both sides, pretending to be for the people while secretly working against us. But I won't let them destroy what we've built. We can't afford to be naive anymore. We must act." His advisor, Commander Diarra, nodded in agreement. "We've been monitoring certain individuals, Mr. President. There are whispers of a coup being planned, led by those who are connected to Western interests. We've also learned that your cousin might be involved in some of these discussions." Ibrahim's heart sank as he listened to the report. His cousin, the one person he had trusted in all of this, someone who had worked side by side with him during the revolution, was now suspected of betraying him. The weight of this truth hit him hard. It was one thing to face betrayal from foreign powers, but betrayal from within, from someone so close to him, was a different kind of pain. "We have to move quickly," Ibrahim said after a long pause. "We can't let this conspiracy take hold. If they think they can use the people against us, they are wrong. We will expose them before they can do any damage. We must act now, before it's too late." Ibrahim's security team sprang into action, gathering more intelligence on the suspected plotters. They traced the calls, listened to the whispers, and carefully gathered the evidence needed to expose the conspiracy. The investigation revealed troubling information. Several high-ranking officials in Ibrahim's government were secretly working with foreign agents, including individuals tied to the French government, to undermine his leadership and weaken Burkina Faso's progress. The conspiracy was deeper than Ibrahim had initially feared. It wasn't just about power, it was about control. These leaders didn't care about the people or the country's future. They were only interested in maintaining their own wealth and power. For them, Ibrahim's vision of a self-sufficient, independent Africa was a threat. When Ibrahim confronted his cousin, the man denied everything, insisting that he had been misled. But Ibrahim could see the guilt in his eyes. It was clear that the trust they had shared was broken beyond repair. The evidence was overwhelming, and Ibrahim knew that there could be no forgiveness for those who would betray their own country. "I'm sorry, Ibrahim," his cousin said quietly, unable to look him in the eye. "But I was trying to protect you, protect our people, in my own way." Ibrahim's voice was cold as he responded. "You were never protecting us. You were protecting yourself. You put your own interests above the people's. That's unforgivable." The betrayal hit hard, but Ibrahim knew what had to be done. He could not allow disloyalty to fester within his ranks. His country's future was too important. The conspirators would be exposed, their actions brought into the light. Within days, the plan to undermine Ibrahim was thwarted. The conspirators, including his cousin, were removed from power and investigated for their involvement with foreign agents. The truth was laid bare for the people of Burkina Faso to see. When Ibrahim confronted his cousin, the man denied everything, insisting that he had been misled. But Ibrahim could see the guilt in his eyes. It was clear that the trust they had shared was broken beyond repair. The evidence was overwhelming, and Ibrahim knew that there could be no forgiveness for those who would betray their own country. "I'm sorry, Ibrahim," his cousin said quietly, unable to look him in the eye. "But I was trying to protect you, protect our people, in my own way." Ibrahim's voice was cold as he responded. "You were never protecting us. You were protecting yourself. You put your own interests above the people's. That's unforgivable." The betrayal hit hard, but Ibrahim knew what had to be done. He could not allow disloyalty to fester within his ranks. His country's future was too important. The conspirators would be exposed, their actions brought into the light. Within days, the plan to undermine Ibrahim was thwarted. The conspirators, including his cousin, were removed from power and investigated for their involvement with foreign agents. The truth was laid bare for the people of Burkina Faso to see. In the aftermath of exposing the conspiracy, Ibrahim Traoré knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The political elite who had tried to destroy him were not easily defeated. Despite their removal from power, many of them still had powerful connections abroad and could wreak havoc in other ways. Ibrahim understood that his enemies were not just going to sit idle after their defeat. They would regroup, find new allies, and continue their efforts to destabilize his government. Ibrahim felt the weight of this reality, but he knew he couldn't show any weakness. His country's future depended on his leadership and the people's belief in him. Burkina Faso had come so far in such a short time, and Ibrahim had promised his people change. He couldn't let corruption and betrayal reverse all the progress they had made together. The next few weeks were filled with intense work. Ibrahim focused on the economy, trying to create more opportunities for young people who had long been abandoned by previous governments. The Future Builders program was launched in full force, bringing thousands of young Burkinabé back into the workforce and providing them with the tools they needed to succeed. The repatriates, now empowered with work and purpose, helped drive the country's infrastructure forward, building roads, schools, and hospitals. With their help, Burkina Faso began to look like a country on the rise, one where its people could thrive without leaving for foreign lands. But the political climate in the region remained tense. Ibrahim's enemies in neighboring countries, especially those with ties to Western powers, were quietly pushing for his removal. Ibrahim knew that Burkina Faso was not an isolated case. His vision for a free and independent Africa was a challenge to the status quo, and that made him dangerous to those who profited from Africa's dependence. One evening, as Ibrahim sat with his closest advisors, he received a report that foreign interests were trying to orchestrate another coup attempt, this time through a political alliance with certain figures in the African Union. He had suspected that some leaders in the Union were still unhappy with his rise, and now the plot was becoming clearer. He could not allow this to happen. "I will not let Burkina Faso fall again," Ibrahim said to his team, his voice firm. "We've come too far. The people have placed their trust in me, and I will not let them down. We will expose this plot, and we will show the world that Africa's leaders must stand together, not against each other. His team immediately set to work, gathering intelligence and securing evidence of the foreign involvement in the plot. It was risky. They would have to move quickly and quietly. But Ibrahim's resolve was unwavering. He was ready to confront the people who would stop at nothing to prevent Africa's progress. In the following days, as the investigation progressed, Ibrahim received a warning. It was from a trusted contact in South Africa. The message was clear. The coup plotters were preparing to strike in a matter of days. They had already made contact with several high-ranking officials within Burkina Faso's government, who had remained loyal to the old system of corruption. Ibrahim knew that time was running out. He called an emergency meeting with his closest allies, including Commander Diarra, his most trusted security chief. Together, they devised a plan to counter the coup. It wasn't just about keeping his position. It was about protecting the future of Burkina Faso and the continent as a whole. The people had put their faith in him, and Ibrahim would not let that trust be betrayed again. Under Ibrahim's leadership, the plan was set into motion. The conspirators would be exposed, their plans thwarted before they could carry them out. It was a dangerous game, one that would risk not only Ibrahim's leadership, but the future stability of the entire country. The days that followed were filled with tension. Ibrahim's security forces moved swiftly to neutralize the conspirators, while the government issued a public statement about the dangers of foreign interference in Burkina Faso's sovereignty. The message was loud and clear. Burkina Faso would not be swayed by outside forces, and no one would be allowed to undermine its independence. On the final day of the operation, Ibrahim gave a public speech, addressing the nation directly. The enemies of our nation may have tried to destroy us, but they have underestimated the strength of our people. We will not be silenced. We will not be divided. We stand united, and together we will build the future we deserve. His words reverberated through the streets of Ouagadougou and across the nation. The people of Burkina Faso had endured so much, but now they saw that their leader was ready to face any challenge. They rallied behind him, supporting him with the same strength and resilience that had brought them this far. The plot to overthrow Ibrahim Traoré had been foiled, but the battle for the future of Burkina Faso was far from over. Foreign powers, corrupt politicians, and those who still sought to control Africa's destiny would never stop trying to manipulate the continent for their own gain. But Ibrahim had proven that no matter what, he would fight for his people and their future. His leadership, his unwavering commitment to Africa's independence, and his ability to overcome betrayal and adversity had made him a symbol of hope, not just for Burkina Faso, but for the entire continent. As he stood in front of the people, looking out at the faces of those who had supported him, Ibrahim knew that this moment would be remembered in history. It was a moment of victory, not just for him, but for Africa's future. A future where its leaders would rise together, united in dignity, and where its people would never have to look elsewhere for hope. The days following the defeat of the coup plot were filled with a deep sense of determination. Ibrahim Traoré had won yet another battle in his fight for Burkina Faso's sovereignty. But he knew that the struggle was far from over. The forces that sought to destabilize his government, to weaken the people's resolve, were still out there, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike again. However, Ibrahim's resolve was stronger than ever, and his people's faith in him had only grown. He spent more time in the countryside, visiting villages and meeting with ordinary citizens. He wanted to remind them that their future was not dependent on foreign governments or external influence. It was dependent on their own unity, their own strength. The young people who had once been repatriated were now helping to build up the economy, creating jobs and pushing for education reform. The transformation was becoming tangible. One afternoon, as Ibrahim sat in a small village meeting with farmers and workers, An old man who had lived through Burkina Faso's many challenges approached him. The man, weathered by age and hardship, looked at Ibrahim with gratitude in his eyes. "President Traoré," the old man said softly, "I have lived through many rulers, many promises. But in you, we see hope. You speak of a future where our children do not have to flee to survive. I did not believe this was possible until I saw the changes you've made." Ibrahim smiled, humbled by the man's words. "I am only here because of people like you," he replied. "You have given me the strength to fight for a better future for our country." It was moments like these that reminded Ibrahim why he fought. The challenges, the betrayals, the conspiracies, they were all part of the struggle. But in the end, it was the people's unwavering belief in a brighter future that fueled his efforts. Back in the capital, political opposition continued to grow, as expected. Corrupt politicians who had once aligned themselves with foreign powers were now more vocal, making accusations against Ibrahim and his government. Some whispered that the country's recent success was a fluke, and that Burkina Faso could never truly break free from the grip of international influence. But Ibrahim Traoré had learned how to handle these challenges. He was no longer the young, untested leader who had risen to power in the midst of turmoil. He had proven time and time again that his commitment to Burkina Faso and its people was unshakable. One day, Ibrahim stood before a large crowd in the heart of Ouagadougou, addressing not just the people of Burkina Faso, but the world. The challenges were far from over, but Ibrahim Traoré had become a symbol of resilience. "My friends, my people," Ibrahim began, his voice steady and powerful, "we are not here to ask for the world's permission. We are here to claim what is ours. For too long, Africa has been held back, manipulated, and used for the benefit of others. But we will not be pawns in their game. We will build our future ourselves, with our own hands, our own strength. Burkina Faso will rise, and we will rise together." The crowd cheered, their voices rising in unity as Ibrahim's words reverberated throughout the city. The struggles and sacrifices of the past had forged a new generation of leaders and citizens, one that refused to accept anything less than their rightful place in the world. In the months that followed, Ibrahim continued to push forward with his plans to modernize Burkina Faso. He invested in education, healthcare, and infrastructure, ensuring that the country's resources were used to benefit the people, not to line the pockets of corrupt officials. He also expanded partnerships with African nations,